Why do I sound like a robot? I am hopefully going to read it in 2021. I think we should include that part. I think I will. I got my cozy sweater, my sweatpants, my cat socks, and my Crocs, and I'm ready to talk about some books. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you're having a great 2021 so far. I'm so excited about the new year. So many wonderful new possibilities. And with the new year brings a whole onslaught of books that are just waiting to be read. Today we are going to be discussing the top books that I want to read for 2021. I actually have my handy dandy clipboard here that I wrote down all of the books that I want to read for 2021. I do this every year. I think it's fun. It feels like an accomplishment to check off a box. So I have all the books right here. So let's get started. The first book in the stack here that I have is All Other Nights by Dara Horn. This was a book that I found at Half Price Books. I was just perusing the shelves and, well, no, perusing, that's using it wrong. I was just roaming the shelves and I came across this book. It caught my eye, just this one little sliver of a spine, and I was like, what is this? This looks interesting, cool name. And it is a Civil War, it's a historical fiction novel set during Civil War time. It follows a young man who is Jewish and he is tasked with killing his uncle because he works for the Confederacy and he has to marry a spy from the other side, and it's like intrigue and it's historical fiction, and I just love it all. I'm very excited. Haven't heard anything about it, don't know really much about it beyond that, so I'm really excited to give it a try, especially since it was kind of a random surprise to find, but I'm very excited about it. Next, I have Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So this book is, I believe this is her debut novel, and she is a very great writer. I've read, of course, We Shall Be Feminists, and I've read Dear Jawale, but I haven't read any of her fiction books. And so I was like, you know what, I'll go in order that they were published, so I'm going to start off with Purple Hibiscus. I remember starting it a long time ago. I honestly still have a bookmark in here. I think I was in high school when I started reading it, but then I kind of fell into a really bad reading slump. So I'm a little more mature in my reading, that it's something that I'll be able to pick up and actually read. But the premise is very interesting. I love a good coming-of-age change novel. It's always really great. I'm excited to finally dive into her fiction writing a little more since I've read her nonfiction work, and I think this would be a great place to start. The next book is The Virginity of Famous Men by Christine Sneed. This is actually a collection of short stories. I ordered this a long time ago. I think I was back in high school and I had my first job, so I was really excited and went on a book buying spree. So this is one of the books that I bought. So it's one that's been on my TBR bookshelf here for a really long time. So I'm it's about time that I finally get to it. I'm a sucker for a good short story collection, and I hadn't really heard anything negative about this one. So I'm excited to give this one a try. I honestly don't really know much about this at all. I know one of the stories is called The Virginity of Famous Men, so I think it'll be interesting to kind of go into each of these stories and kind of have a blind eye about if they intertwine or if they intersect, and kind of discover that, and it's going to be a totally different experience, so I'm excited to read this. So next on the list is Next Year in Havana by Chanel Cleeton. So this is another historical fiction book that follows its dual perspectives. One, it's intergenerational, so it follows the main character in 2017, her name is Marisol, and then I believe it's her grandmother, Elisa, who is from, I'm reading the back of the book, so, she's from Cuba, and so it's kind of about Elisa's story as well as Marisol's story, and I'm super ready to read this. It's a book, I bought it last year, and I'm ready to get it off of my TBR shelf so I can add it to my lovely bookshelf over here. I'm full of beans about this book. So next up we have Woman Hollering Creek by Sandra Cisneros. She wrote the book The House on Mango Street. I remember I had to read that as required reading my freshman year, and I loved that book so much. So when I found out that there was another book that she had written, I was like, I have to read this. So I found it at Half Price Books, and I am going to hopefully read it in 2021. And I think that Sandra Cisneros is a very beautiful writer. Very excited to read another book of hers. I've heard good things about this one as well. I mean, obviously I think I've heard all good things about all the books that I want to read this year. But Sandra Cisneros is just one of those writers that she can really tell a story in so very little words, and it's very powerful, and just the themes that she talks about are very interesting. So, Woman Hollering Creek, it's gonna be great. Super excited. Next. So another book that I'm hoping to get to in 2021 is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. I first heard about this book when I was watching a YouTube video by Drinking by My Shelf, one of my favorite YouTubers, and she just raved about this book, and I was like, well, I love the books that she reads. We have very similar reading tastes, so I'm excited to give this a try. It's it was written in 2019, and it was very, very popular and got a lot of accolades. It won the Booker Prize of 2019, which is amazing. And I think that this book, I don't really know much about it, if I'm honest. I just know that it is very moving. It talks a lot about things that are going on today in society, kind of about Black women, queer women, people of color, and about their journey, and they're British, so you know, that's always a nice twist. This is one of the longer books on my list this year, so I want to get to it sooner rather than later. It'll probably actually happen more so in the summer, but it is also one of the books that I am very excited for. So it's kind of, you know, we'll see when I get to it. I know that it's one of the books that it's definitely a must for me to get to. I am just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about getting through this book. I'm excited. I think it's going to be a really great book, and I think it's going to spark a lot of amazing conversations that are very important to have. So, Girl, Woman, Other, Bernardine Evaristo. On to the next one. So the next one is the book that I've owned probably the longest, or at least one of the books that I've owned the longest that I haven't read. And that is A Psalm for Lost Girls by Katie Bayerl. I just thought that the premise of the book was super fascinating and nothing that I had ever read before. And it follows a young girl whose sister had just been, her sister was just murdered. And so the town is a very small town, and they're very Catholic, and so they now believe that the young girl who was murdered has become a saint. And so they create shrines, and they ask the girl to pray for her, or to pray for them. And so the sister, of course, thinks this is all baloney. She's going through grief. The mother isn't very supportive of that grief. And so it talks a lot about grief, religion, how they play a role together. But then there's also this side mystery of like what really happened to the sister. Who was she really? Was she really the saintly girl that they think she is? And then there's also like a young girl who shows up mysteriously who they think is like going to be a reincarnation. I think the girl's name is Tess. They think she's a reincarnation of the girl who died, Tess. And so they're like, oh, this is mysterious. What's going to happen? I don't know why I haven't really gotten to this book yet. It's been sitting on my shelf for so long, and I just haven't picked it up before. So ready to just finally read it, and if I love it, I can move it over to my main shelf, and it won't sit on my TBR shelf forever anymore. Next book to be read in the year 2021 is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. So this is a book that I've checked out from the library a number of times, but then just like this past 2020 major reading slump for me. So I picked it up from the library so many times, and then I just never got around to actually reading it. But I was recently at my half-price books back home, and wasn't super successful trip this time around, but then I saw Such a Fun Age, and it was like a very nice hardcover, and I was like, wow, that's a sign. I need to own this book, so I'll finally pick it up and read it. I think that that what it's about is very interesting. I know that it also raises a lot of very good conversations surrounding race, and I think those are very important conversations that we need to be reading about, constantly talking about and reading about, especially as a white person. These are not like experiences that I have firsthand accounts with, so it's very important that I educate myself to the best of my ability, and I think that this book is such a great way to have those discussions and open those discussions for other people. So I'm ready to read this finally. It's been one of those books that I've been really wanting to read, and I'm gonna do it. This is the year to do it. No more reading slump. We're gonna read it. Woo! This next book I also found on that same half-price books trip, because I found Such a Fun Age, and then I found this book, and I was like, wow, it's my lucky day. 2 books that are on my Goodreads TBR that are like relatively new, and they're hardcover, and they're so nice. So this book is Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. This was a Book of the Month book, as you can see. So this book is another historical fiction, if you're sensing a trend here. And this is more romance than it is just a historical fiction novel. And one thing that like really intrigued me about this book was this final little saying here in the front flap. It says, locked in a battle with rising passion and impossible attraction, Annabelle will learn just what it takes to topple the Duke. Bring down the Duke. So I know it's gonna be some kind of like romance, and it's gonna be like a man, like enemies to lovers kind of vibes, and I'm super excited about that because of course it's one of the best romance tropes. I think we can all agree, one of the best. And set in a historical period, I mean, the best. I feel like it's also going to be like Bridgerton, not like the same kind of thing, but like the same kind of energy. Like we're gonna have Bridgerton bringing down the Duke. So I'm super interested in this, and I just hope that it lives up to all the potential that I'm creating in my head about it. Super ready, bring down the Duke. Let's do it. And so the final two books I don't actually own in physical copies. I own them on my e-reader, on my little Kindle. And the first one is Middle Game by Seanan McGuire. And I personally really love Seanan McGuire. I have my collection of the Wayward Children series. So I'm a big fan of her work. So I'm really excited to read something that isn't that series by her. She is one of those writers that just is always so clever with what she's doing, and so I'm a big fan, and I'm so ready to read something a little bit different from her, and the premise is so cool, so super excited. And the final book that I would like to read in the year of 2021 is, drumroll, is Priest Daddy by Patricia Lockwood. One of my favorite like niche little genres that I love to read is religious memoirs. Priest Daddy is about a girl whose father was a Catholic priest and how she grew up in that environment. And if you are familiar with the Catholic Church, typically priests are not married, they don't have families. Usually it's only, well, not usually, it is, like for the Roman Catholics, that is. It's men who convert to Catholicism, and they were priests in other denominations. Sometimes they get to keep their priesthood and be priests in the Catholic Church. And I think that is such an interesting, and just an interesting situation. And I think that the perspective is going to be very interesting. So I am just very intrigued about what that life entails to be the child of a Catholic priest. So I'm super excited to read that one. I actually just bought it today because it was a book I've been talking about for so long, and I saw it on Amazon as like $1.99, so I'm super excited that I saw that. Those are the books that I want to read for 2021. 2020 was certainly a year when it came to reading. It wasn't my most perfect year, it wasn't my best year, but I'm very hopeful for 2021, and I think that the books that I want to read in 2021 are going to be some of the more exciting books, and I think it's just going to be a really great year. I have high hopes. I have high hopes for this reading year. We were in a major reading slump basically all through quarantine, which was so counterproductive because I had so much time to read, and I really didn't read a lot. So now I'm hoping that I can make up for lost time and read all these great, amazing books. So again, Happy New Year. I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to y'all later. Have a good one. Well, that was exciting. Well, okay. So exhilarating. Oh yeah, sorry, I can't say exciting. It was exhilarating. I've heard a lot of good things. Of course, I say that I'm excited to read all of them because that's my book list. So, you know, excited to read them all.